Hello everyone, how you going? Welcome to What I Miss About Living in Canada. Now obviously every single country and everyone's going to have their own little attachment to home, and so I just want to know, this lady's moved to Australia and so I want to know what she's missing from home.
So today, I am going to be talking about the things that I miss about living in Canada. Let's jump into it. There are a number of things that I miss about living in Canada, and obviously this is aside from missing my friends and family. The first thing that I miss about Canada is actually winter and snow. I am definitely a winter baby. I love snow, I love winter, and I love winter sports in general. I love sledding, I love snowboarding, I love skiing, I love all of that.
I mean, this just kind of comes back to the fact that, like I said, people are going to have an attachment to home, and so if that's what you've grown up doing, in the same way that someone has grown up running and now they can't run for whatever reason, either way, the entire thing, you just be going, oh, I just have that attachment and I just can't do it. Unless, I guess, of course, you go to like the one ice skating rink in the entire country, or maybe you just kind of trek into the snow for a little while, but overall, you're just not going to be getting that snow in those winters.
I just like cold weather, and I love snow.
So many layers,
I am sure if I was back home, though, I would be singing a very different tune. Winter does last forever in Canada. Like, that's the one thing that I would say is most
always winter.
You love winter for like a little bit, but then it does get really old.
Yeah.
Australia.
Like I said, if we take it back to here, where is it? There's just so many layers. Like, how long does it take you to get dressed? I mean, I'm sure you probably get a little bit faster at it. It's like pants. Here you go, 4, 5, 6 layers, a scarf, beanie, sunnies, whatever you want to call it. The entire thing, the entire kit out just takes all of that. Let alone the fact that if it gets wet, then you have to just like leave it in somewhere, a sauna or whatever, to let it dry, and you just don't have anything or whatever it may be. It just sounds like an absolute nightmare.
And I love snow. Australia does get snow. Obviously, it's nowhere near the same as Canada, but in Sydney, we don't get snow. So that's just like what I miss, is actually having snow like where I live. Kind of off the back of that, I miss having distinct seasons. In Toronto, at least, we have 4 very distinct seasons. I really miss having like a really hot summer, a really cold snowy winter, and a very distinct spring and fall, because I do find that it makes holidays and things like that feel more special, because as soon as the seasons start to change, you start to associate those smells and that temperature and those feelings with holidays that are in that season.
Wow, I wonder, I guess I can only assume that she's going, oh, when it's getting cold, it's coming around to Christmas time or whatever, but either way, the entire thing, I guess I can understand that, but either way, that's just because you're going to be inside, where, I guess, Sydney, I feel as though we definitely have distinct seasons, but maybe just not as distinct as other countries, I guess.
And I love that. So yeah, I find that there is more nostalgia when you have distinct seasons, but maybe that's just because I grew up with that, I don't know.
Yeah, I was about to say, I feel as though that's mostly because you probably are just like more in tune, like because that's what you grew up with, and so you go, it's meant to be Christmas when it's cold because there's winter, whatever it may be, and so you're just going, oh, this just doesn't feel right, and so I feel as though it's actually a little bit more of a mental game than actually just not noticing that there's 4 distinct seasons.
Another thing that I really miss is, which I never would have thought about because I never thought about this when I lived in Canada, is diners. Obviously, we're not the States, we don't have like as many true American diners, but we do have a lot of diners, especially for breakfast. Like if you're hungover and you want just like greasy diner food, there are lots of places you can go in Canada, at least in the major cities. I've lived in 3 of them, so I know, but at least in Sydney, it's really difficult to find diner food, especially for breakfast.
Yeah, well, that's because you shouldn't be having it for breakfast. It's kind of just tailored that way because no one would be having it. They're going, why would we want that? We want, I guess, well, a lot of people are going to be going to a cafe to get whatever it may be, whether it be a coffee, a bacon and egg muffin, whatever it may be. The entire thing is just definitely just dedicated not towards diners, because everyone would just think you're absolutely crazy if you're going anywhere near that entire restaurant for breakfast.
Breakfast food here is healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe not healthy, but it's all like contemporary, avocado on toast, like chia pudding, like things like that, which I love and I wouldn't trade, but I do miss sometimes just like a good old fashioned like scrambled eggs, greasy bacon, greasy hash browns, not like the big brekkie on the same greasy.
But you can get virtually that. I mean, I don't know about the potatoes. And then in terms of mixing the pancakes with everything else there, that doesn't really make sense because that's a very American thing, to be mixing the sweet and the sour or the sweet and the savory. But either way, the entire thing, you'd definitely get like bacon and eggs and all those big breakfasts. But I guess she said, no, I don't want that. And so I'm a little bit confused. But anyway.
Bacon, greasy hash browns, not like the big brekkie on the
what's
same
the difference? I'd love
vein.
to know.
I miss cafes that are open past 3 p.m. That's one of the weirdest things I find about Australia, because cafe culture is so big here, but for some reason they all close at like 3 or 4 at the latest. But yeah, like back home you can find cafes, and a lot of cafes will be open until
What,
like
midnight?
11 p.m. So if you want,
That's not a cafe then. That's like probably just a Starbucks or something that's open to 11 p.m. And that's the reason that that entire thing failed, because the coffee culture is morning and breakfast and lunch, and that's it. There's no way that it is going into the afternoon, because that's not a cafe anymore. That's not a dedicated cafe. That's just a random restaurant that happens to serve coffee and things.
want to catch up with your friends, but you don't want to drink or like go out for a full meal or something, you can just go get a coffee or a tea, because it's just nice to catch up with somebody like over tea at night instead of like going to a bar. And my final note on cafes, I really miss cafes.
I mean, I don't really know if it's strange, but it's definitely different. Like, I can understand what she's talking about. I don't really know about the coffee at like 9 p.m. That sounds like a little bit of a heart palpitation that you're never going to be going to sleep. So maybe that's another reason why we don't have it. But either way, the entire thing, I can certainly understand if you just want to kind of have a cup of tea, but I feel as though people are going to be having that, they're inviting people over instead of going out. So maybe that's just a little bit of a cultural difference there, you know? Instead of actually just going out to get a Starbucks or whatever you might be doing, you just actually, you want to come over and have a cup of tea. That's more so the culture. And I think that's more of a UK thing than American thing. And so maybe we just got it from there instead.
And my final note on cafes, I really miss cafes that let you work and like sit there and use their Wi-Fi and work. Very few and far between. In Australia, most cafes, that's not really a thing. It's slowly coming around. It genuinely is more of a thing now than when I moved here, and I only moved here 2.5 years ago. Yeah, like in Canada, you know, most cafes will be set up for those who are working remote and working from home. I don't even know a cafe that wouldn't have.
Wait, working from home at a cafe, I don't really know if you want to be saying that the cafe is your home, but no, I can certainly understand. And it's come up a couple of times where people have gone, oh, you know, either the Wi-Fi at the cafe isn't very good or whatever it may be, you know, it's just different kind of culture, because people generally, I mean, you definitely see people kind of hanging out at cafes, but I don't feel as though there is a massive thing about people working at a cafe. That's a little bit just different, I guess.
Free Wi-Fi. And I said this one time in a video, and somebody was like, I don't understand why, like what would be the benefit to the cafe to allow you to sit there all day, use their Wi-Fi, like maybe just only buy one coffee and just like take up space. And my answer
here we go.
is, first of all, cafes are different in Australia. They are set up more like restaurants. So that's probably the biggest thing. Like our cafes in Canada are more similar to like a Starbucks. Some cafes you can get.
What did I say? What did I say? I just knew it. I was going, there's no way that that kind of just behavior would be tolerated, because you're literally just taking up a space from other people that just want to come in with their dogs or their kids, whatever it may be. Everyone's just kind of welcome, but you can't stay too long unless you're actually buying stuff. You can't just be sitting there taking up an entire spot where other people want to be sitting down actually just drinking stuff.
Get real meals in, but when I say cafe, like there's kind of two levels. There's like breakfast restaurants and then there's cafes, whereas in Australia, like they're one and the same. So that's the first big difference. I worked in HR and recruitment in both countries, and I can tell you it is more commonplace for people to work remotely and work from home in Canada. So I do think that's probably one of the biggest reasons why cafes are set up like that in Canada, because they have to be. Like they have to adapt with the changing workforce, and in Australia we're like a little bit behind on that. It's not as common for people to work from home and to accept roles where they're like, I work 2 days a week from home.
I mean, it's not about accepting roles, it's about roles being actually just available and people just even being offered that. And so, I can certainly understand what she's talking about, but I feel as though people generally wouldn't want to be working from a cafe. They might just go work from a park, or I don't really know. But either way, the entire thing, I'm working from a cafe, I feel as though people are just never going to do that. It's like just taking up the random bus the entire day. No one is going to do that. I feel as though everyone should just kind of follow the mantra that if you're not buying something, you're not going to be sticking around for too much longer. You should just probably move on, because you're just taking up someone else's spot.
Whereas in Canada, it's a lot more common. Obviously, Australia will catch up with that just as the times change. And I'm sure in like 5 years, if you're watching this video, it will be completely different. I'm sure there will be.
When was this actually made? Okay, 2019, 16th of Feb 2019. And so yes, I can certainly understand. I mean, obviously there's a few changes that happened since 2019, but overall, I mean, I feel as though, I don't know, I kind of have to disagree with that. I don't think it's about catching up. I think it's just a different in culture.
Lots of cafes with free Wi-Fi that have like designated working spaces or just let people sit there and work. Now I get asked all the time if there's any food that I miss from Canada, and like Canada doesn't really have distinct food, like, like what's Canadian food?
Yeah.
So not really.
Oh, of course. I mean, you could certainly get that here. At least that's one of their biggest exports, I'm fairly sure.
The food in Australia is insane. Like, it is phenomenal food, and the food in Canada just like honestly doesn't even compare.
There we go.
So I would say
That's what we
on
like
the
to
food front,
hear.
not really. The only things that I do miss are beaver tails. Beaver tails are so good.
I wonder what
they are
they
like
are.
so up my alley. I love a beaver tail, especially after like skiing or snowboarding.
I mean, of course, that's just coming back to the entire nostalgia factor, but look at those. I would love to know what they actually are closest to in terms of what we have. Maybe they aren't close to anything, but they kind of look like, I don't know, they kind of look like a really flat piece of chicken covered in whatever you want to call that, all different toppings, but at the same time, I can only imagine they're more of a bicky or biscuit. And so, yeah, I have no idea what that would be tasting like, but they look actually pretty decent.
I don't miss poutine because I do not like poutine. I have never liked it. And I do miss Tim Hortons bagels.
What?
I don't
What
miss
is
their
going on
coffee
there? That just looks like someone stolen the middle of your burger.
now anymore. At first I definitely did. I don't miss their coffee now
I don't
anymore.
miss the
At first
coffee
I
now.
definitely did. I definitely don't miss their coffee. It tastes like shit compared to Australian coffee.
There we
but
go,
I really miss
another
their
winner.
bagels, and I miss like having bagels, I guess, more readily available. Like, there obviously are places you can find bagels in Sydney and like Australia, but in Canada I found, at least like where I have lived, it was more of a thing. I also miss lakes. I mean, I'm not a big beach person,
true.
but I'm like a huge lake person. I love a dock, I love lakes, I love boating, I love water sports. Like, I love water skiing and wakeboarding
Fair
and
enough.
tubing and all of that. I grew up doing all of it. I really do miss being on a lake. And in Canada, for a lot of us, at least like in Ontario, we have cottages and stuff. Not every family, but like you always like know someone that has a cottage, so you spend summers cottaging.
Fair enough. I mean, I do feel as though everything she's talking about is certainly understandable, but it's definitely a very nostalgic kind of factor. It's not like, oh, I miss this because of an exact reason. It's just more, oh, I grew up there and so that's what I'm used to, or that's just memories or whatever. And even though Australia obviously has a massive amount of coastline, and I guess we've got a couple of rivers, so I'm fairly sure she lived in Sydney, so we're not going to have massive rivers overall, but either way, we certainly don't have just very accessible lakes that everyone lives on with cottages or anything like that. That's just not a thing at all. And so, yeah, overall, everything just makes sense, but it's definitely just nostalgia.
And yeah, like, it's just so good.
I can understand how it's pretty cool though.
I think a lake to an ocean.
Ooh, that's a big
I
call.
think it depends on the context, but I do miss having lakes.
Fair enough.
Weirdly enough, I also miss hockey culture. I never thought I would say that ever.
Interesting.
But I genuinely do miss like hockey and baseball culture. I think that's just because those are
Obviously ice hockey because it's Canada and whatnot, because Australia actually has field hockey a lot. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not a massive sport, field hockey, but it is definitely going to be bigger than ice hockey because really, I don't know a single person I've ever heard of hearing someone playing. And so, yeah, anyway, whatever.
And it's not because I like sports. Like, I honestly don't give a shit about sports. It is like a cultural thing, and I'm sure it's the same as any country. Like, every country has like their sport. It's not even that I like going to games because I like watching the sports. I could just watch that on TV. It's the cultural experience. And growing up in Toronto, we would go to like Blue Jays games and Leafs games all the time. I just kind of miss that cultural aspect to it, and just how united everybody gets. And like, hockey is just such a big deal for us in Canada. Like, every kid grows up playing it. It's just such a thing. So I do miss it. And
Fair enough. I can certainly understand that entire culture, that even if you're not really in it, you like the kind of atmosphere that it can bring. And I guess being in Sydney, you're going to have a little bit more of a split between the NRL and the AFL, and so that's a little bit more difficult. Maybe if you're in Melbourne, you'd actually feel as though, or if you actually went to the games, you'd be more included in that entire thing in terms of the AFL. And so perhaps that's actually more so what she's missing. I mean, obviously it's not going to be the same because you're not going to have the sports you grew up with, but it's just like the atmosphere, like she said, you know, if you actually were invited to an AFL game, I feel as though you'd probably get a similar atmosphere, you just wouldn't have the connection there.
the last thing that I miss is benefits. Obviously, if you guys are Canadian, you'll know when you get hired by a company in Canada, like 9 times out of 10, it comes with a benefits package.
Like the US.
And what that includes is basically coverage for like dental, the optometrist, buying glasses.
Yeah.
It's basically like the same as if you bought yourself private health insurance, but you don't have to pay for it. Well, sometimes you do. Sometimes you do have to like salary sacrifice a little bit to
so
get
it's
it, but it's always
discount.
a lot less than if you actually purchase private benefits yourself. Although we do get public health insurance in Australia. I know that. I had a lot of comments in another video about how I like didn't understand the Medicare system. As a Canadian, originally I didn't get that. Now I'm on partner visa, so I do, but I still pay for private health insurance because Medicare doesn't cover like dentist and optometrist and stuff like that. Although for Australia, at least, like we have the super fund, so every employer has to pay into your retirement retirement savings, like no questions asked. We have that option in Canada, but not every employer does it, and you don't have to opt into it. But
yeah, right. So there's just so many different little things where in terms of money just flowing in, okay, so you have to pay for this, but we don't pay for this. Okay, we're not going to pay for this, but we do have to pay for this. And there's just, I guess it's just differences in terms of they're just prioritizing things. And especially because, I guess dental and whatever else she said, optometrist, was it? I mean, they definitely can be claimed a little bit on Medicare, I think, depending on what it is. I mean, maybe as you're getting older, especially with a pension card, then you definitely can start claiming things. But generally, the entire thing is just kind of set up for more, I guess, either chronic or just sudden and just catastrophic injuries and whatnot. And so,
yeah, in Australia, it is the law as far as I know. And
yeah,
obviously, the salaries in Australia are higher than Canada. So in a way, I'm sure it does equal out. Yeah. But it's just nice not to have to worry about where your benefits are going to come from or where your insurance is going to come from, stuff like that. All right, guys. Well, that's it.
There we go. Obviously, that's going to be the end of the video. But no, everything that she did bring up certainly makes sense. Like I said, there was a lot of nostalgia. And so, yeah, everyone, I guess exactly like I said at the start, everyone is definitely going to have just a link to their country no matter where they're going. They go, oh, I absolutely love it here, but oh, I just wish I had this and this and this. And of course, you can't kind of cherry pick like that, but at the same time, everyone can dream. And I guess actually that's what this entire video is about. It's not things that are bad or wrong or anything like that. No, it's just things that I miss, or I guess she misses about Canada. And so, yeah, it definitely makes sense. And there were a couple of things that I go, oh, lakes sound cool and this sounds cool as well. And so, yeah, I guess, like I said, you can't cherry pick, but we can all just actually go and I guess appreciate what we do have. But anyway, in saying that, I reckon I'm going to call it there. So thank you for watching this video. If you did enjoy it, make sure to do the YouTube algorithmic things down below. Also, if this is the first video of mine that you're watching, then maybe you want to check out some of the other ones we've done. We've done Australian ones, international ones, and also make sure to check out the original video down in the description. Or hey, maybe even just want to consider subscribing so that you don't miss another one of these in the future. But all in all, have a good one and see ya.